Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
How are you? Let's go ahead and do a round of introductions. 1 second, and I'll go ahead and start. My name is Dominique Edwards, and I am the city's new engagement specialist. Sorry, just doing some chats with the team. So making sure that, our runner show is going very well this evening. So yes, again, my name is Dominique Edwards, and I am the city's new engagement specialist. Who do we have in the room this evening? And also, if you have not changed your name yet, please go ahead and do that for us.
Yeah, I'm Ryan. I'm the AmeriCorps. I'll be taking the notes here as well as recording the session. So.
Hi, everybody. Lori Hammond, South Bend Common Council at Large.
Councilwoman Hammond, can you change your name for us?
I don't know.
If you look at the chat, if you look at the chat, there's instructions on how to change your name. Okay, let's go ahead and continue on with our introductions.
Hey, I'm Marco Mariani. I live on the south side of South Bend off of Ewing in Miami. I've lived here since 1992. I'm currently the executive director of South Bend Heritage Foundation. Prior to that, I worked for community investment for about 14 years and then ran downtown South Bend for 5 years as well. So I know many of you.
I can go next. My name is Liz Meredith, and I am the Director of Neighborhood Development at the City of South Bend in the Department of Community Investment. But I am also a 15-year neighbor in the near Northwest.
Good evening. My name is Andre Northern. I am the community organizer for the Near Northwest neighborhood.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Keisha Hoover. I'm a board member and resident of the Northeast Side neighborhood. And I also know Mr. Mark Maniano from the South Bend Heritage Program.
Good evening. My name is Matt Bellina. I'm a homeowner in the Sunnymead Wayne Street neighborhood.
Good evening. My name is Patty Walsh, and I'm on the board of the Northeast Neighborhood Council. I've been in the neighborhood 30 years. I live on Walsh and McKinley.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lily. I live on West Jefferson, and I am an import into South Bend. I've been here for 4 years, and I like it here. So I'm just a neighbor, and I'm happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Luol Webster. I live on Howard Street on the east side. I've been a 67-year resident of the Northeast side. I've been a member of the Northeast Neighborhood Council for over 25 years, and I'm glad to be invited to this meeting.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the introductions. So let's go ahead and get started with our discussion. So we have a couple of discussion questions that we would like to ask you, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen for you. So here are a few of the discussion questions that we have. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, thank you. So let's start with the first question. What do you think the Neighborhoods Council, excuse me, will achieve in 2021 and beyond? Does anybody? Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I think the as we go along, I just want to understand your things. For instance, like, what do you think the neighborhood council will achieve? What does the neighborhood council want to achieve? What are your objectives? I feel like I'm just learning this now. I don't know about everyone else, but if you can tell us more about this council, what do you want to achieve, or what? I don't know.
So
maybe define it. Start by defining it for us. Yeah.
Okay, so the neighborhood council is basically made up of a number of you that are a part of neighborhood associations or different organizations to see how we can better serve the city of South Bend. So looking at different issues that we can tackle together, and looking at different approaches in regards to what we're faced with in regards to different issues across the city.
Thank you.
Of course. Are there any other questions for that anyone might have?
I hope that the council, that the different neighborhoods would be able to come together as we are now and to remain together and to achieve goals for betterment of not just your neighborhood, but the city in a whole. And I think if we work together and get to know each other, I think that we can achieve that goal and we can keep it going for years to come. As younger people get involved in the community, we can educate them on how to go about achieving goals and making plans to make their community a better community.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else?
Well, I definitely hope that it will improve communication between neighborhoods so we can better join together to solve some of the issues that South Bend faces, and join collectively and approach the mayor's office with solutions.
Okay. Does anyone else want to share?
I would also like to see each of our neighborhoods less isolated, by understanding what other neighborhoods are up to and what they're doing and sharing at that level.
Would anybody else like to share?
Point. Sorry, I want to add to what Patty said, that there's a huge disparity of resources. I think if there was a way to distribute what's available equally, I would say, have infrastructure that is comparable, right? Like, for instance, there are streets that are so great to drive down, and there are others that are just horrible, right? It's one city that changes so drastically. There was a way to make all these things uniform somehow.
Does anyone else want to expand? add to this question at all? Okay, well, let's go ahead and move forward to the next question if anybody else doesn't have anything else to add. So what does a successful neighborhood council look like to you? And what will it help you or your organization or organizations achieve? I think we're already kind of teasing a little bit of that out, and we're hearing some pretty good things so far. So would anybody else like to kind of expand on this question or kind of add input?
You know, I'll just say I appreciated Luella's comments about youth engagement, and if there's any way we can have more focus on youth engagement at really, you know, the most appropriate levels, and I don't know what those are. I don't know if that's the high school level or even the college level, but I think if there's an opportunity for youth or groups of youth to engage in this council, it would be, I think, a healthy thing for our community.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think most people want to push diversity so that there's representation, like the neighborhood is represented by every demographic. But more importantly, I think we should come from literally every corner of the city, because unless someone actually lives in a certain neighborhood, they cannot pontificate the issues, right? They're not super passionate about it. So if we can shoot for representatives from even the most remote streets where, you know, people usually don't participate, but somehow provoked them enough to join the dialogue, right? In my neighborhood, we've explored having kind of like block captains so that every block has somebody that's, you know, speaking for them all the time. If we can have something similar too, I think I'd want to see that.
That's some great feedback. So basically what I'm hearing is that you're wanting to make sure that the neighborhood council is diverse, that it's representative of really the entire city, not just particularly different organizations or neighborhood organization or neighborhood associations rather, but you're saying that even some of the most remote areas in a city need representation on the council.
Yeah, just to push that diversity, but to also have geographical diversity.
I think you broke up a little bit there, but I think that what I heard out of that was not just appropriate representation and diversity, but you're saying from a geographic standpoint as well.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? What do you think that the Neighborhoods Council will help either your neighborhood associations or your organizations? What do you think that it'll help them achieve? Whether that be particular issues with the city or challenges you might be facing within your neighborhoods, or things that you want to see be brought forward or have more attention to, things like that.
I think public safety is an issue. And I think it would be good to be able to communicate citywide, because problems aren't isolated in each neighborhood. They travel from area to area. And if we can have a better understanding of public safety and how that's being handled on a citywide basis and being addressed, that would go a long way to making residents of each neighborhood feel comfortable and safe and like there's something being done to alleviate certain situations.
Okay. Does anyone else want to expand or on that or add to that?
What I'm definitely hoping for is deeper connections in order to kind of pull resources when tackling certain issues. So, you know, we've reached out to other organizations that may need different resources, whether that be computer equipment or expertise or those sort of things, connections with the other neighborhood hubs and whatnot. Will expand that, you know, for all of us. You know, the deeper our connections go, the more information that we'll be able to share, you know, the better our problem and our solutions, you know, like basically solving our problems and the solutions become easier that way.
So what I'm hearing from you, Mr. Northern, is basically being able to connect with other organizations across the city so that you can do information sharing, resource sharing. And Ms. Walsh, what I'm also hearing from you in regards to public safety as well. So basically aligning on different ways to being able to share information, share resources, and things like that. So that actually would take me into the next question. What challenges do you think that the Neighborhoods Council should undertake?
Dominique, can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
Going back to Patty's comment, I'm just wondering what, in her mind, what that looks like, getting kind of an overview or a debrief on safety in the city. What would the expectation be?
I'm assuming that question is being addressed to me. I don't necessarily know the answer to that question. I think communications is primary, and communications with whatever organizations. I think the police department would be an important participant. And I think neighbors from each of our neighborhoods need to be in touch with each other and aware of how we might want to proceed to address these issues. I mean, there are things that we can probably do, and I think back to engaging youth and offering alternative activities to engage youth would probably be a really good start.
I know that before COVID, several of the neighborhoods would have police officers, or at least a police officer, at their neighborhood meetings, their monthly meetings. Is that still a common practice, or have the virtual meetings done away with that?
I believe the virtual meetings have done away with that, at least in the Northeast neighborhood.
I think that even though we have gone to virtual meetings and stuff, I think if you get to know the officers in your neighborhood, build a relationship with them, and when you see them, feel free and comfortable that you can talk to them at that particular time and say, look, this is what's going on. How can you help us? I mean, several neighbors here on the east side do that all the time. When they see an officer in their area, they'll stop, introduce themselves to the officer, and the officers really appreciate the fact that we come out and we do talk to them. So I think if you can find a way to build a relationship with the officers in your neighborhood, that is a safety measure, and that they know you and you know them, and then your neighbors know who you are. That's a main important part, knowing your neighbors. Nowadays, we seem to be a neighborhood of where we go in our houses and we stay in our houses. and we'll walk out in the morning and say hi if we see our neighbor getting in a car. We have to get away from that. We have got to get to know our neighbors and let our neighbors know that we are neighbors and we can work together and we can build a good community and establish a good relationship and get involved. But like I said earlier, most of us here are older people. We have got to figure a way to make that challenge to get to the younger generation and get them on our boards and get them involved. So I think safety is very important, and get to know the officers of your neighborhood. I think I know every officer in my neighborhood, and they know me because I'm not afraid to talk to them. So that's the relationship we have to build in order to build a safety barrier in the city.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Webster. Basically what I'm hearing from what you're saying is doing some relationship building will help to more than likely strengthen the neighborhood council. So not just strengthen, but not just relationship building with our police officers to address public safety, but also with our youth, with our neighbors, and other folks to kind of address some of the challenges that our community is facing, right? So, and so that actually brings me into the next question. So is there anyone that's not a part of this conversation that should be? And if so, well, how do we plug them into this conversation?
This particular conversation, this particular meeting, everyone that's invited is the people that should be in the neighborhood council in the future.
I think I'd like to build on what Ms. Webster said. I think the police definitely need to be invited exactly for the reasons that she mentioned. You know, there is a disconnect between neighborhoods and the police department these days, and we have to find a way to bridge that gap again.
And I'm sorry, Lily, I think that, and I'm sorry, Mr. Northern, I'm gonna get back to what you were just saying, but Lily, I thought I didn't hear all of what you had stated.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think my internet is not that great. I also have trouble hearing. I'm really sorry about that. You know, I wanted you to clarify. I feel this conversation here, I was invited into this dialogue today. So I feel like everyone that was invited is here. But as far as the neighborhood council going forward, who should be part of that dialogue and who isn't, I feel the right people are part of this dialogue right now. Getting the neighborhood leaders here is the right thing to do. In the future, I feel those neighborhoods need to get more representation within them so that more people can be represented here. So I don't know if there's anyone that can be part of this dialogue right now that isn't, but in the future, maybe, yeah, for sure, more people, different people.
Thank you so much for expanding on that, because as Ms. Webster was also saying, and I think Ms. Walsh had also stated too, was, and I apologize if I misspoke, if not everybody did say these things, but about youth involvement, right? So what is the future, basically what does the future of the Neighborhoods Council look like, you know, if youth isn't involved, if appropriate relationships aren't fostered and built, and like I've stated, you know, who is a part of this, who isn't a part of this conversation that should be. So we wanted to make sure that all of the neighborhood associations, the leadership and whatnot were involved in the Neighborhoods Council so that we can make sure that we have the appropriate representation that we've talked about tonight as a part of the Neighborhoods Council. But if somebody isn't here or there are certain groups that aren't being represented here, how do we make sure that they get plugged into this conversation? What, maybe not at this moment, but perhaps in the future. And so that actually might take me into the next question about where do you see the Neighborhoods Council in 3 to 5 years? And where do you see the Neighborhoods Council in 3 to 5 years? And what will the Neighborhood Council have achieved on a small or perhaps a large scale?
I think in 3 to 5 years, the neighborhood council should confidently say that we have done what Luella talked about, Miss Luella talked about. Because if we cannot, as a group or as leaders, get to know our neighbors, then all this is without purpose. I personally would want to get to know more of my neighbors and walk more and engage more. Get that feedback from the people at a grassroots level, and then bring that feedback here. So I don't know if I'm allowed to be in this council, I'd want to come back and say, I have gotten to know my neighbors more. Mm-hmm. And there's more youth, right? Because the more we walk, the more we talk, we get that youth involvement that everyone has been talking about tonight.
And that's some really great feedback, Ms. Lily. And Mr. Northern, as a community organizer that's been in the community for a long time, can you kind of, not so much as address, but kind of maybe add some context onto some of these things?
As far as this fifth question, is what you're asking? Where do we see it in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, or any additional feedback that you might have.
Well, to be honest, like 3 to 5 years, like that's an interesting question. I actually was sitting here pondering that. I think that entirely depends on us and where we want to take it. So far as that goes, you know, we put ourselves together and we figure out what's most important to us here in the city, the things that we really do want to address, not the things that we may be able to solve on our own, but things that we can come together and solve and whatnot. Some of the larger problems, like, you know, we can get streets fixed and whatnot, but what do we do about the disenchanted youth? That is a huge problem in the city right now. There are a lot of just random crimes and whatnot, wayward youth, people losing their way. What do we do about the mental health aspect of a lot of our citizens? You know, like these are the different things that I'm hoping that we address in this council. The very serious problem, the homelessness, you know, like what do we do together, come together, putting our heads together about those issues, and not to dump it on the mayor's desk, or not to point fingers, or not to, you know, turn it into a squabble of any sorts, but real solutions. You know, like what I'm hoping the council will be is, you know, kinetic energy. We're making moves, you know, not so much verbal energy, but we're actually coming up with plans and we're following through with those plans. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yes, Ms. Webster.
I think although we want to try to figure out where we're going to be from 3 to 5 years, we first got to figure out, are we going to stay together as a council and work together to reach those 3 to 5 years? So many times we get on different boards and organizations and then we just fade out and there's nothing. So we have to have the commitment and the dedication to stay together as a council before we can even think about, I mean, we can think about reaching out for the next 3 to 5 years, but we need to come together and make sure that we're going to stay together in some kind of way so that we can achieve some things and bring on new people in the community. But we have first got to get that commitment and dedication ourselves.
And so to expand on that, Ms. Webster, what do you think it'll take for folks to stay together for maybe not the next 3 to 5 years? Maybe think of it in a small scale. What about 6 months? What about 1 year?
You know, I was on the Chief Rakowski had a committee, a group of neighborhood leaders together, and we got off to a really, really good start about trying to reach out into the community and bring the neighbors together and get our young people involved and to deal with the different situations going on across the city. We were off to a really good start. And all of a sudden, it just fell apart. And we had good people on that committee. So I think that if we're going to do this, we have got to be the first to make the commitment to do it. And the only way that we can do it is to not just say, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then next 3 months I don't hear anything from you. So we have got to figure out a way where we can stay together. And I think maybe going to, like, I like to see some of you come to the Northeast Neighborhood Council meetings. Come into our meetings. I like to go to the near Northwest meetings to get to know how you operate and what it is that you're doing. And once I can learn what you're doing and you can learn what I'm doing, we can build a better relationship, and we will find ourselves stand together. Because when something jump off, I can call Andre and say, hey, this is Lou. Is there anything that we can do to help you? Or he could do the same for us, you know? And that's, I think, how you build a relationship, is by attending one another's meetings and learning how each other operate.
And Ms. Webster, to expand on everything that you just said, I think that Mr. Northern had also kind of alluded to that earlier, where he was saying about information sharing, resource sharing, and things like that. And honestly, it could be that information sharing and that resource sharing, honestly, and what we're talking about in regards to relationship building, I think it just starts with showing up, right? So it just starts with showing up. And so that actually, I have some more questions, some questions that weren't, posted. So, but as you were saying, Ms. Webster, it sounds like the city or maybe another entity has already done something similar before to the Neighborhoods Council, right? And so I think that goes back to the earlier question about what are some of the challenges of the Neighborhoods Council? And that sounds like it was a challenge. Like you said, you had some good people, maybe burnout happened, or perhaps, folks got tired, or, the trajectory of it just, like you said, it fell apart. So in regards to this new council, how often do you think that people should get together? Like, we don't want this to fall apart, right? And we're trying to think of 3 to 5 years now, but what about 6 months from now? What about a year from now? So how often do you think that the Neighborhoods Council should get together?
I personally would say at least once a month, because we're starting off new and fresh. So we need to meet at least once a month, set some goals as to what it is that we're trying to achieve. And once we find out who the committed ones are, then we can continue to move forward.
Okay. Anybody else want to expand on that? Or on some of the things that are being said?
I would take once a month just so I can be in Miss Webster's presence. It sounds reasonable. I think that's fair to start with, for sure.
Awesome. What do you think, like, the structure of the Neighborhood Council should be, like, in regards to representatives? So I'm not sure how the old council worked, Ms. Webster. Like, if you guys had folks that oversaw the council, or you had representatives. Like right now, different neighborhood associations, you guys have like your officers, like your presidents and your vice presidents, treasurer, maybe your secretary. And I'm not sure, like, what are the terms of service, right, for like your representatives? Do you have people like your presidents and your vice presidents of your organizations? Do they stay in their terms for a year, 2 years? Things like that. So how does that work for you guys? And what would that look like for this council?
Well, we have yearly annual meetings, and at that time, officers' positions are up for nomination, and we nominate our board in, committee in, once a year. It would be up to the group to set what a term would be, a 1-year term, a 2-year term, and then re-election of the officers. So that's something that the council itself would have to come up with. But we do have annual meetings every year. And at that time, if we bring on new members, new council people, or if an officer want to step down and we need to nominate somebody, or somebody want to be nominated to a position, we do it during that annual meeting.
Anybody else want to add on to that? Because I think that sounds pretty good. An annual meeting, some monthly meetings to kind of start out with, and especially in regards to like goal setting. So like for this new council, what are some of the goals that you might want to bring up or bring forth? I think we kind of been teasing a lot of that out. We're talking about youth, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about information and resource sharing, and then like really like neighborhood like cross collaborations. So what do you guys think?
I think it's important also
I think more
to
grassroots efforts.
Sorry, Patty got started and then Lily got
I'm
started.
sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, well, I'll continue. I think it's important also to focus on increasing the strength of each individual neighborhood council and really increasing participation, which has been very difficult during COVID time. I mean, we're meeting, everybody has to meet virtually. And so certain participants tend to drop off. And it would be nice if we could figure out a way to just keep everybody together and well informed during this time so we can move forward in a stronger way together as a neighborhoods organization. But figure out some way to help each individual organization achieve maximum participation if possible, so we can better inform each other as time goes on.
Okay, we just have a few minutes left. Lily, you were saying something about grassroots work.
Yes, and I
just saw it in the chat. Okay.
I'll just
I'm good, thank you. I think that you'll grab it from there.
if I could just mention too that I like the idea of some of what I heard earlier from the mayor and from Santi, which was if the council can be sort of a clearinghouse or a sounding board or a feedback session for something that might be on the mayor's agenda or the Department of Community Investments agenda, where they can get sort of broad feedback and input from the community about whatever it is that the city might be facing administratively. And I know there's always a lot of very specific issues, but if there are broad neighborhood topics that it's a big group to manage, but if this could be a location for some of that discussion to happen and have access to the mayor and representatives from the Department of Community Investment on a regular basis, I think that would really be helpful for a lot of neighborhood folks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So and back to what you were saying, or what a couple of folks were saying, especially you, Mr. Mariani, how would the Neighborhoods Council make, and actually to Mr. Northern's part earlier, how should the Neighborhood Council make recommendations to the city or the mayor? So like, for example, whether that be informally or verbally, during meetings or formally, and then forming subcommittees and writing statements, things like that.
Yeah, I don't know. As soon as you start putting a lot of structure to a large group like this, I think it can get a little unwieldy to manage, but maybe not. I mean, there's enough technology, and if there's city staff support behind this too, I think that there can be ways to really share that information. I think probably informally initially, as sort of a sounding board would be helpful. And then if things needed to become more formalized, I think that could be a topic of discussion for the administration and the entire council.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, Mr. Mariani, you were saying that basically it might put a little bit of stress on a council that's so large, or trying to form such a, and I think that's what I'm hearing, correct?
I think it could if you start to put a lot of administrative structure on that, but I don't know. It's for the council to sort of decide how organized they really want to be and formalized and put a hierarchy to it. It's just a consideration. I think it's a factor to consider. When you do that, then you have a lot of other things that are required as part of that. But certainly gathering and getting together and having a broad group like this is great. New people, new relationships. And I mean, I think I know just about everybody on here, but Lily, I know I need to meet you, Lily, for sure. At some point, Dominique as well. So, and Mr. Northern also, I appreciated your comments about if South Bend Police Department could be represented on the council, that would probably be a wise move. So as we continue to have discussion.
And I think that might be to Ms. Webster's point about the relationship building with police officers, like basically knowing who your neighbors are, knowing who's doing patrols, you know, so they've got it on lock. In Ms. Webster's neighborhood, because she knows who her police officers are. So, and like how many other people across the city kind of build those types of relationships within their neighborhoods, right? So I think that's a good point to add on. So is there any other feedback?
I just add there, I think there's a lot of digital platforms out there now, apps and other things that a lot of neighborhood groups are already using across town in small groups to share information. So I think if we can leverage all that energy too, it would benefit the effort.
Did you and Lily come together? Because she just put that in the chat.
Oh,
so she said,
Okay.
said, what if there was, she said, what if there was a large communication platform to keep the dialogues going prior to the main monthly or periodic meetings? So I think of platforms like Slack. A lot of folks use Slack to stay connected, and other, in other type of platforms. And we're going to be closing out our breakout rooms here. In the last few seconds, does anybody have anything else?
I'm just trying to be like Lily, that's all.
Yes, me too. I would love to meet Lily. So, thank you all so much for being so engaging in this process. And guess we'll see each other again in the next few seconds when we jump to the main room to reconvene this discussion and talk about kind of what we all chatted about a little bit. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.